Professional golf just had its worst week in years, and almost nobody outside the industry understands how bad it actually is. Welcome back to PGA Updates Hub, where we break down everything happening inside the world of professional golf before the mainstream media even catches up. Today, we are talking about a meltdown that started just days after the PGA Tour announced what they called the most ambitious restructuring in tour history. 3 days. That is how long it took for the celebration to turn into chaos. Brian Rolap and Tiger Woods stood together and told the world golf was saved. Instead, what followed was a wave of sponsors walking away, and some of the biggest names in the sport publicly turning against the very system they helped build. This is not a story about angry fans or random critics complaining online. This is about the corporations who poured 9-figure deals into this tour, and the players who were supposed to be the face of this new era. These are insiders. These are people who were in the room. And right now, many of them are done. Let's start with what actually changed. Starting in 2028, the PGA Tour will operate in 2 separate tiers. The top tier, called the Championship Series, will feature around 23 to 24 elite events with minimum purses of $20 million. Only the top 120 players will compete at this level. Below that sits the Challenger Series, where purses drop all the way down to around $4 million. Here is the part that shocked everyone. If a player finishes outside the top 90 at the end of a season, they are demoted, not warned, not given a grace period. Demoted straight into the lower tier for an entire year. Imagine being a player with multiple tour wins and strong major finishes, and one rough season sends you down to compete for a fraction of the money you are used to. That is not reform. That is a trapdoor, and players know it. But the decision that really broke trust with sponsors was something else entirely. The tour eliminated sponsor exemptions completely. For years, sponsors paid massive money specifically because it gave them the ability to bring certain players into their events. That access was the entire foundation of these sponsorship deals. Remove that access, and you are not just changing a policy. You are removing the reason these companies signed up in the first place. And that is exactly what happened with Farmers Insurance. They had been title sponsor at Torrey Pines for 17 consecutive years. 17 years of brand loyalty built around one of the most iconic venues in American golf. They did not renew. The 2026 Farmers Insurance Open was their last event. The tour will say this decision predates the announcement, but that explanation misses the bigger picture. Farmers watched years of instability inside the tour, and when the new system removed the one benefit their entire deal was built around, they simply walked away. Century Insurance stepped in to fill that spot, and the tour tried to frame this as a win. But here is what they did not say publicly. Century needed a new venue because their own event in Hawaii was cancelled due to a water dispute. This was not a brand chasing a prestigious opportunity. This was a company looking for somewhere to go. That difference matters more than people realize. Now let's talk about the situation that should genuinely concern every golf fan watching this unfold. FedEx has sponsored the tour's season-long competition since 2007. 19 years of history tied directly to the FedEx Cup. This is not just a sponsorship. This is the entire narrative structure that helps casual fans understand the season. Without it, the tour loses more than money. It loses its identity. That deal expires after 2027, right in the middle of this massive transition. When Rolap was asked directly whether FedEx would commit to the new restructured system, he refused to confirm anything. Total silence on a potential 9-figure renewal during the most uncertain period in tour history. That silence is not a small detail. It is a warning sign every other sponsor is watching closely. Valspar and John Deere are facing a quieter version of the same crisis. Both events could realistically be placed into the Challenger Series, which means their purses would collapse from $20 million down to just $4 million. Tournament officials from both events have given vague non-answers when asked about their future. That kind of silence usually means lawyers and accountants are working behind the scenes trying to figure out what comes next. Rory McIlroy gave fans the number that explains exactly why sponsors are nervous. He said certain events might lose their stature entirely unless a sponsor is willing to pay $30 million just to stay relevant inside the new system. $30 million. That is the new price of admission, and for many sponsors already questioning their return on investment, that number is simply unreachable. Rory is not just another player. He is the reigning Masters champion and arguably the most recognizable face in golf today. Years ago, he was one of the loudest supporters of tour reform during the LIV conflict. Now, he is calling the new lower tier a glorified version of a small regional event. He even said the old system before all this change actually worked pretty well. Think about that. The man who pushed hardest for change is now saying the previous structure was better than what replaced it. Then there is Patrick Cantlay. He sat on the policy board, the enterprises board, and Tiger's own competition committee. He was in every meeting, every conversation, every compromise that shaped this announcement. When the vote happened, he abstained. He was the only board member who did not vote yes. He gave no real explanation, and his public comments afterward carefully avoided actually endorsing the plan. Some insiders believe his current ranking puts him dangerously close to the relegation line himself. Whether that is true or not, the silence speaks volumes. And then Jack Nicklaus weighed in publicly at his own tournament. He said plainly he is not in favor of these changes. His concern is simple. Smaller historic tournaments could be pushed completely off the map. When the greatest player in golf history says something like that, standing on his own course, it does not feel like one opinion among many. It feels like a warning the entire sport should be paying attention to. So here is the real problem. The committee that designed this system included Tiger Woods, Adam Scott, Keith Mitchell, and Maverick McNeely. These are players who built this plan from scratch over 9 months. Yet the loudest voices pushing back are Rory McIlroy, who wasn't even part of those meetings, Jack Nicklaus, who hosts one of the marquee events, and Patrick Cantlay, who helped build the system and still couldn't bring himself to support it publicly. This is not bad luck. This is a structural problem in how the plan was created and who actually had a voice in shaping it. Now, to be fair, the core idea behind this restructuring is not crazy. A true meritocracy makes sense. Real consequences for performance make sense. Removing sponsor favoritism even makes sense in theory. Those are reasonable goals. But here is the mistake. You cannot roll out a relegation system before locking in your biggest financial partners. You do not announce brand new rules while your most valuable sponsors are still trying to decide whether they even want to stay involved. The tour did this in the wrong order, and now they are paying the price. 5 championship series venues are still unannounced. FedEx has not committed to anything. Valspar and John Deere remain silent while they evaluate their options. The combined commercial value, currently sitting in uncertainty, runs well into the hundreds of millions of dollars, and it keeps growing every single week this drags on. This was supposed to be the bold new era that finally united professional golf. Instead, it is exposing massive cracks just weeks after launch. The question now is whether the tour can move fast enough to repair these relationships before the 2028 launch date arrives, or whether this becomes the moment that defines the downfall of the modern PGA Tour. That is everything you need to know about this developing situation. Make sure you are subscribed to PGA Updates Hub, because the FedEx decision alone could completely change the direction of this story, and you will not want to miss it when it happens. Drop your thoughts in the comments and let us know whether you think this restructuring can be saved or whether the damage is already too deep to fix.